right, guys, this is our lesson for 4B. This is 4B part 2. Okay, 4B part 2. And in this lesson, we start learning about factor by grouping. That's what we're learning, factor by grouping. And when we're looking at factoring by grouping, we're going to need to remember how to factor the GCF from each row. So we're going to do just a few examples to remind ourselves how to do that. When we want to find that GCF from the terms in our row, we're looking at the number part and the variable part. Since this second term does not have a variable, our GCF cannot have a variable. And this number part is short, so that's our short list for the number part, 1 times 2. So our GCF has to be 2 since 4 also has a factor of 2. That's the best we can do. All right. Now, of course, when we factor that 2 out of our row, we're going to look to see, well, what do we need to multiply this 2 by to get back here? And that'll be an x. Our subtract will bring up. Anytime that subtract is right there next to where our header is, we'll pop it out, okay? 2 times 2 is 4. So that's what we get when we factor out the GCF. Let's take a look here at the next one. We've got a negative in that box right by our row header, so we'll pop it out here, okay? And that means our GCF is going to be a negative. Both of our terms are negative. This 4x, look, it is a factor of 8x squared. That whole thing will come out as our GCF, all right? And when we factor that out of that first term, we do not pop the negative out here because this guy's already negative. All we need to do is multiply that negative 4 times 2. That'll give us the negative 8. In order to get back to that x squared, though, we need to multiply by another x. Now here we've already taken that negative out here. So instead of popping it up out here, look at that. We only can manage a 1. So 1 times negative 4x is negative 4x. So that's how you do it if you do pop your negative out on your row header. Okay, same here. We've got that negative in the first box, so we'll go ahead and pop it out. Okay, so that's the rule we're going to follow. If the negative is in the box closest to our row or column header, we'll go ahead and bring it out. Now, as you can see, we're looking at these two terms, nothing in common. So, unfortunately, all we've got is that 1. We've got to go with the 1. So what do we need to multiply our negative 1 by to get back to this negative 3x? Well, 3x. How about here? Well, we need to get back to a positive. This guy's a negative, so we're going to have to go negative 4 there. And we can always multiply, and we can see, well, yep, 3x times negative 1, negative 3x. Negative 4 times negative 1, positive 4. And that's exactly what we needed. So always check to make sure that you're doing it right by multiplying, okay? By multiplying and making sure that you're getting where you want to get. When we factor by grouping, the expressions we're factoring it already has 4 terms. Factor by grouping, we always are going to make a 4 by 4 box. Now, the answer will end up looking something like this, okay? Where it will look like a multiplication problem. So keep that in mind, that what we're doing here is we're going backward, right? We're going backward. So here we've got what looks like our answer. Now, we can combine these two, but when we factor by grouping, we already have 2x terms, like so. That means we're all ready to put them in a box. And I've got some boxes kind of made up, so we can kind of go a little faster here. So just like we did when we were multiplying, we'll go ahead and make a 4 by 4 box. On this first example, I wanted you guys to see, and actually on all of these, I have gone ahead and put our little GCF line that I've been writing in our notes. And this is something that you can write. You don't have to write. We talked about how when we're factoring like this, we are just assigning this first. This is our first term. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they go in our boxes like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. So make sure you remember, you just put them in 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go ahead and do that. All right. So the first term we'll put in that first box. It's going to be that 6x squared. And we'll go ahead and remember that it's got that invisible plus, right? We don't have to write that, but we need to remember that that's a positive. All of these terms are positive. We will start seeing some negatives. Make sure you keep your sign. If you see a sign to the left, it stays with that term. So we've made our box. We've put our expression, the terms of our expression in each spot of the box. One term, one spot. Now we need to find the GCF for each row and column and then put it outside the box, right? So for this row here, our GCF for that row will go here. Okay. The GCF for that second row will go here. The GCF for our first column will go here. And the GCF for the second column will go there. Okay. So let's go ahead and walk through that and see what that looks like. So for this first row, 3 goes into 6, and that'll take our biggest factor of the number part. We do have x's in both spots. And so for that first row, our GCF is 3x, okay? What about the second row here? Well, we always look at that short list. Our 8x also has a factor of 4, so we can use 4 as the GCF of the bottom row. Now, you can take the GCF of your columns, or you can do it like we were doing when we factored out the GCF. We can say, what would I need to multiply 3x by to give me 6x squared? So I'd need to multiply by a 2 to get from 2 times 3. Well, that equals 6. Good. I would also need to multiply by an x. X times x equals x squared. Okay. Will it work for this second row? Let's see. 2 times 4 is 8. And then we've got just that x. Bingo. So when you factor by grouping using the box to organize, when you play this little trick, what do I need to multiply by to get to here? It will work for both of your rows, okay? Here we've got, got to bring that plus up, and then we need to multiply by 1. 1 times 3x is 3x, good. 1 times 4 is 4. And guys, always, always, always check. Now, of course, for your answer, it is going to need 2 sets of parentheses. These side terms, they're going to go inside that first set, just like so. So we'll take the 3x. Guys, it's really important you remember, here's a plus, it's invisible. But between these two terms, we've got to have an add or subtract. If you don't see a minus here, it's an add. These terms from the top, they'll go in that second set of parentheses. Of course, when you don't see a sign, make sure if you forget to bring your sign up, make sure you fix that here, okay? So here's our answer for our first example factor by grouping, okay? All right, let's try that again with example number 2. Example number 2. So once again, we're going to use our little box that I made here for us. And guys, just get used to making these 4x4 boxes when you're factoring. We're going to use those a lot, okay? Don't have to be perfect, okay? But we do want to make them a 4x4 box. If you see 4 terms and you're asked to factor by grouping, you're just going to pop those terms right inside your boxes. one term for each spot. So that first term, 10x squared, goes here. Now we're going 5x and 4x, okay? Now I want you guys to notice that those x terms are in a diagonal there. We're going to come back to that later. Our last term is a 2. So the first thing we're going to do, GCF for both rows, okay? So here we know 5 goes into 10. That'll take our biggest factor there. Okay, so we'll go 5. We got x's on both spots, so we'll go 5x. That's the GCF for these two terms. Okay? For these two terms, our GCF would be 2, right? Short list. Now let's pop up here. What do I need to multiply 5x by to get back to 10x squared? Well, I'd need to multiply 5 by 2 and x by x. Let's see if it works for this second spot down here. 2x times 2, yep, 4x, we're good. And here we'll need a plus 1, okay? We'll go ahead and take those side terms. They'll go in the first set of parentheses, the top terms in the second set. And you can see that the parentheses are touching. That's because when we go backward or divide, we end up with that multiplication problem we started with, multiplication of polynomials. So when we're going backward, we'll end up with an answer that looks like a multiplication of polynomials problem. And that's exactly what we want. Okay? You can always multiply this term using the box to check. Now, when we're multiplying, look, those terms will go on the outside, right? And we'll multiply and combine like terms. Guys, we're going to be doing a lot of multiplying and factoring polynomials, so make sure you remember how to do that. Let's take a look at example 3. All right, here's the box that we want. All right, so let's see what terms we need to put inside of our box. So here we have 7x cubed for example number 3. So that first term, go right there in that first box. Second term in second. Third we'll go down that next row. Fourth will go here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 in terms of where we're going to put those terms. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? So 7x cubed goes in that first spot. Then subtract 5x squared. Guys, those signs, watch your signs. Okay? Subtract 42x goes here. And then we're going to add 30 in that last spot. So we'll go ahead and start off, get that the GCF of both rows. Guys, then we do have a negative here, but it's not in our first one here by our header, so we won't take it. 7 and 5 do not share a common factor. And again, we're not going to use that 1 for anything unless it's a placeholder. So we're not even going to be worrying about that right here. But we will take an x squared because both terms do have x squared factors. Okay? Here, the subtract is in that first box right by our header. So we do pop it out here. What's the GCF between 42 and 30? Well, here's a good place to use that your calculators to find that. You can also use factor tables or divide, but let's see if we can just make a couple of factor lists real quick. So for 42, we've got 1 and 42, 2 and 21. We've got 6 times 7, right? For 30, we've got 1 and 30, 2 and 15, and 3 and 10, 5 and 6. So comparing the list of factors that we have here, the biggest factor that 42 and 30 have in common is 6, okay? So that's going to be our greatest common factor for that row. Now, since the 30 does not have an x, we will not have a variable part for our greatest common factor of that row, just the number part of 6. Okay, and again, you can do this on the calculator. Don't forget to do that on the calculator. To get that GCD on the calculator, you're going to go math, arrow 9. And when you do that, this is what will show up. And we'll go 42, 30, and then we'll go enter, okay? And that will return our factor of -6. So these are the calculator instructions. Make sure you write those on your notes, guys. All right. Once we've got the GCD or the GCF for both of these rows, we can go back through and we can say, what would I need to multiply x squared by to get 7x cubed? We'd need to multiply that x squared by 7x. Here's a subtraction on that spot right by our header, so we'll pop it out here. And we need a 5 there to multiply our x squared. A -5 times x squared, yep, -5x squared. Let's check our second row, make sure that we did everything right. 7x times -6 equals -42x, yep. -5 times -6, +30, great. All right, so at this point, we'll take those terms that are on the side. Those will come down into our first set of parentheses. X squared minus 6 times, and now here we'll bring down those top terms, 7x minus 5. All right, and that is the answer for that example number 3. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at example number 4. Now on this one, again, we're factoring by grouping. Always be looking at your instruction, guys. The instructions are going to be so important. Do you need to find the GCF? Do you need to factor out the GCF? Do you need to factor by grouping? Do you need to factor the quadratic? They're all going to be handled just a little bit differently. So always, always, always be checking out what is being asked in that problem. So our first term, of course, goes in the first spot. Here's that second term, plus 4x. Then we'll get our third term here. Oops. Minus 21x. Then we've got minus 28. Let's go ahead and look for the GCF of that top row. Okay. 3 and 4 do not share a common factor other than 1. Of course, I'm going to even stop mentioning that. I'm hoping that by now you guys understand that 1 is not something we're going to look at for our greatest common factor. We're only going to use that as a placeholder, okay? So for 3 and 4, they don't share anything, but we do have x and x squared, so we will factor out an x since they both share an x. Of course, that's my short list, right? For this next row down, that subtract is in the first spot right next to my header. So I'll factor that out. Let's look at factors of 21 and 28. So we're going to skip the 1. We'll go right to that 3 and 7. We'll skip the 1 and 28 here and go straight to our 2 and 14. And then, of course, it also has a 4 and 7. So we can see that 21 and 28 both have factors of 7. No variable on this second one, so we'll go ahead and leave it as just the minus 7, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and do our top spots now. What do we need to multiply x by to get to 3x squared? Well, 3x. 3 times our invisible 1 is 3, and then we'll need an x times x to get to x squared. Let's bring our add up. Make sure you're always doing that. In order to get to a 4x, we're going to need to multiply that x times 4. That 4 will multiply that invisible 1, by the way. All right, does 3x times -7 equal -21x? Yep. How about positive 4 times -7, -28? Yep. All right, side terms will go together in that first set of parentheses. Here's the x. Here's that subtract 7. Now we need another set of parentheses without anything in the middle. We'll put those top terms down. 3x plus 4. Guys, that is the answer for example 4, 4B part 2. 4B part 2. All right, examples. We just did examples 1, 2, 3, and 4.